Hello, everybody, and welcome to the United Stand. Today, I am joined by the senior writer at ESPN, Mark Ogden. I'm sure that you're definitely aware of him, but if you're not, then make sure you go and check out his work at ESPN.com. But Mark, it's lovely to have you on the show, and yeah, welcome to the show, and I hope you're doing well today.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Let's hope it's a bit more of a cheerful season next year than the one we're going to talk about.
Exactly. That's what everyone's hoping in the comments, I'm sure. And hopefully you can give us a little bit of information that'll get the fans positive looking forward to next season. But first and foremost, via Dutch SBN sources, you were actually one of the first people to break that Ten Hag to Manchester United. He was potentially and is now going to be the new manager. Do you have any idea about what Ten Hag is going to put in place at Manchester United and what transfer plans he might already be looking at with the board?
Well, I think the first thing he wants to do is just kind of get into the club, assert his authority. And I think the fact that he came in last week, went to Crystal Palace, just got ahead of the game, really. And it showed that for me is a massive thing, because I think when David Moyes took over, he didn't start until the 1st of July. And I think he lost 6 really, really important weeks. And, you know, in terms of getting players in, getting players out, getting used to the club. And I think Ten Hag has shown that's a real positive for me that he's coming now and he's going to make decisions. And hopefully by the time they start pre-season at the end of June, he'll have a couple of players in. Now, that isn't really down to him. He can only tell people what he wants. But I think that's the plan, that he wants to start the pre-season on the summer tour. I think that's middle of July, with at least 1 or 2 players in. But really has to leave that to John Murta, Darren Fletcher, Richard Arnold. But I think he's hoping to get players in. And we might see a few players going out as well. We know that 5 are leaving, but there might be even more than that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Rangnick's made it very clear that there's certain players that need to go and there's players that need to come in. And he's got a little bit of different feedback on his press conferences for how honest he has been. He was asked about Rangnick yesterday in his press conference, Ten Hag, and he didn't really seem that interested in speaking about Rangnick, to be honest with you, when you looked at him in his press conference. Do you think he will consult Rangnick about transfers coming in the squad?
So I think he will, but I don't think he'll make it the decisive kind of chat that he has. I don't think Ralph Rangnick could be involved next season. I know he has his 2-year consultancy, but he's got this job with Austria. And I think his 6 months at the club have been so disastrous, certainly as a coach, that I don't think he's built up any goodwill. And I think people at the club are now quite, well, I won't say happy to see him go, but I think he said quite a lot. He's upset a few people. And I know the fans appreciate his honesty, but I think at times, I think a lot of that honesty has been there just to protect himself. I think they've had a bad result or bad performances, and he's come out and said something that will tick a box with the fans. And I think it's kind of taken away from his, strange tactical decisions, strange selection decisions. Playing 3 at the back at Anfield, which, playing Paul Pogba at Anfield 3 or 4 days after he'd had a bit of a run-in with the fans. I think Rangnick has been very clever in saying things the fans want to hear, so they don't focus on him. And I think people at the club are wise to that. I think the players are wise to it as well. The players have had a bad year. Let's not get that wrong, but I think some of the players have been unfairly, hung out to dry by Rangnick. So I don't think there's much scope for him to stick around. Erik ten Hag will make his own decisions, but I think obviously he'll have to speak to the guy that he's replacing to say, look, what about this guy? What about that guy? What happened there? What happened there? But he has to make his own mind up. But he will be influenced by information that comes from Ralph Rangnick. But I don't think it can be the only person that he listens to in terms of the players.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he said in his press conference that he's going to make his own mind up. He repeated that quite a lot. It seems like he's now come in and he's going to take on board other people's comments, but he's definitely going to make observations, as he said, through himself and decide things on himself. With Rangnick, before obviously we move on to transfer things, you actually mentioned in an article that he published yesterday, I think it was, which was a really good read, by the way, that Rangnick, you think he potentially might be ushered into the background and not really have much of a say in his consultancy role. How much say do you think he will have in his consultancy role? Do you think it'll be a big role that he has? Or, like you said, is it now just going to be up to John Murta and the rest of the team over summer?
I don't think Rangnick will have any kind of role. I think Man United can't be using the Austrian manager as their consultant. It just doesn't work like that. Can you imagine Real Madrid, Barcelona, Liverpool doing that, having a guy that's managing a mid-ranking national team, giving advice? No, he came in December. They needed somebody to steady the ship, and he did it for a few weeks, and then it kind of sank. But I don't think he serves a purpose now. I don't think he has a track record that merits him sticking around for 2 years. Yes, he had an interesting time at Red Bull and Hoffenheim and Schalke, where he kind of developed teams, but these teams didn't really win anything. I think there's a bit of a myth about Rangnick that he developed these fantastic teams, but we're not talking about Guardiola at Barcelona and Klopp at Dortmund. What if Schalke, Hoffenheim, and Red Bull Leipzig ever won? Nothing. So he's created a few players, but he's good at identifying young players, but young players that progress further. The true Man United need to have players who are ready-made. They don't need players that are projects. They've had enough of those. What's happened to Amad Diallo? You know, a project player, gone away, disappeared. They need to bring players in who are 25, 26, proven players that can do the job now. I don't think that's Ralf Rangnick's thing. He's a player that identifies young players and likes to work with young players. And again, I think people have overblown his reputation a little bit, a bit like a Marcelo Bielsa type, that he's got this way of playing football and people think he's the godfather of Gegenpress, but look at what he's won and it's not a lot. So I think Man United should be looking at people who've won big things, know big things, and rather than deal with Ralf Rangnick, move on to, you know, trusting the manager they've appointed.
Well, I absolutely do agree with you in the fact that he's focused on bringing through younger players. That's what he's done over the course of his career, like you've just stated there. And like you said, Manchester United do need players that are up to the plate now. And he's mentioned in his press conferences the likes of Kanate, Mane, Werner, Firmino, players that he's developed, but he developed them and then they became the big things at the clubs that they moved on to. So Manchester United, we need them players now. But I mean, if you're saying Rangnick's not going to have much of a say, like you said, Austria manager, that's going to be his main focus. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I do think you make some really, really good points there. A young player that we have been linked to since Ten Hag, well, before Ten Hag was announced as manager, but more so when Ten Hag has been announced, is Jurrien Timber of Ajax. 20-year-old centre-back, some would say you can potentially play right-back as well. Centre-back is obviously definitely a position that Ten Hag is going to be looking at. Pau Torres rumours have been circling again in the news this morning. Is any of them players at an advanced stage do you know of yet? And do you know if there's a particular player that Ten Hag does want to bring in that position?
Yeah, listen, I don't know if there's anything that's advanced. I think what United have done since Ed Woodward left is kind of tighten the screws a little bit and made it a bit more of a bit quieter behind the scenes. So if deals get done, they'll be done a bit more quietly. I'd be slightly concerned about Timber on the basis that, as promising as he is, I don't think Ten Hag's first signing should be a guy from Ajax. It just rings bells of Everton and David Moyes again bringing Fellaini. And I think we've seen with Ajax players and players from Holland in the past, you know, Donny van de Beek, Memphis Depay, talented players, but it's such a big step to the Premier League. And I think United, as I've said before, they need ready-made players. Now, Pau Torres, I think that's a different matter. I think obviously he's had a couple of great years at Villarreal, Spanish international, proven at the highest level, proven at the Champions League, Europa League, La Liga. I think with Torres, you've got a player that could drop straight in and be the best centre-half in the club. With Timber, I just think you're asking too much of a young kid to go into that defence, which has got problems at, you know, at left-back, at right-back, at centre-half. It's too much of a challenge for a young kid to deal with. I think Pau Torres is more equipped to deal with that. So I think that's what they're going to be looking at. I think players that have got top-level experience. Because what United need to get away from is buying players from Holland, from Portugal, because with due respect to the clubs, that's kind of Wolves level. That's where Wolves go shopping. United want to be shopping where Liverpool go shopping, where Man City go shopping. Now, yes, they've signed players from Portugal like Bruno who've done well, but then the best player out of Portugal in recent years was Ruben Dias, and United didn't go for him. So they've got to go for bigger, better markets of players where you're more guaranteed to get a top player. And I think United need to be looking at those markets rather than the Dutch league.
Yeah, I mean, it is a risk to bring a player like Timber in because obviously he's young, his age. Some people are obviously saying his height as well potentially won't make it. I mean, what centre-back have you seen be extremely successful in the Premier League that's under 6 foot? You don't really hear of it, do you? So it'll be interesting to see what decision Ten Hag makes and also what decision the board makes, because the board has had Pau Torres on their wish list for quite a long time now. We were rumoured to potentially go and buy him last summer. It didn't end up happening. We ended up getting Rafael Varane. But when it comes to signing players over the next month, do you think Ten Hag is going to have full control over the players he brings in? Or do you think Manchester United and John Murtough, who's been scouting players, could potentially overrule him and get deals done while he is on a break? Because he's going on a break now. I'm sure he'll be there to contact, but is he going to have full control?
No, in a word, I don't think he is. But then Jurgen Klopp doesn't have full control at Liverpool. Pep Guardiola doesn't have full control at City. I think the days of managers having full control are gone. It just doesn't happen. He'll have a big say, probably the biggest say. But if he wants to bring Timber in from Ajax, and 2 or 3 of the people in the scouting department say, look, we've had reports on him and we don't think he's good at this and we're good at that, he'll be overruled. Now, it won't be great if the new manager comes in and his first target is overruled, but that's the reality of modern day scouting and recruitment now across the board. So the manager has an input, but he can't have the final say, because I think I think United learned the lessons. I think under Louis van Gaal, they gave Louis van Gaal basically free rein to bring in whoever he wanted, and it took them 2, 3, 4 years to kind of right the wrongs of that, because he bought some terrible players, some awful players that just weren't Man United standard. So United took more control back of that, and I think it maybe went a bit too far the other way. I think with Mourinho, I think there were a couple of players that Jose wanted to bring in that the club said no. I think wrongly. I think people like Ivan Perisic would have been a great buy 2017, 5 years ago, and they said he was too old. Now, he had a great campaign at Inter Milan last season, so that was when the board went too far the other way, wanted to control all the recruitment. So I think with Ten Hag, this horrible word, it'd be more like a holistic process where everyone has a say and everyone gets involved. But I think, yes, he will have a say, but he won't have the final say. And I think that's probably right. I don't think a club like Man United can allow their manager to be the final say on transfers, because we've seen managers make mistakes in the past. They don't know as much about players as the scouting department, because their focus, quite rightly, is on their team. It's not on about what does this guy look like on a Tuesday night playing away to Heerenveen or playing away to Porto. That's the scouts' job. That's where the scouts are doing it. They have 10, 12, 15 scouting reports on players. The manager doesn't have that depth of knowledge, so they have to make it a broader committee now to sign players, and that's what United are doing.
Well, that has been a problem at Manchester United for quite a while now, which has been the scouting department hasn't been good enough, because that is what the scouts are there for, to scout these players and bring in players that are going to be Manchester United quality. And from what the scouting department has done in the last couple, since Sir Alex Ferguson's left the club, I feel like it's been on a downward spiral, and the players that we've brought in have already been either big names or, like you said, with Amad Diallo, they've not seemed to click and work yet. So it's something that Manchester United definitely need to look at and evolve. Centre midfield is an area of midfield that's been criticised all season through Manchester United fans, through pundits. De Jong has been a target that has been circulating in the news. Someone from Ajax again, that is actually at Barcelona, but Barcelona need to sell financially to be able to bring players in. What realistic targets do you think Manchester United would be looking at in the centre midfield position?
Well, they are looking at De Jong, and they're interested in Declan Rice as well. And I think if they can get De Jong, it'd be a sensational buy. They could maybe capitalise on Barcelona's problems right now financially, but they have to appeal to Frenkie De Jong. And I think with Man United are a big club, one of the most famous clubs in the world, but they're not a team that would attract a Champions League player right now. They're out of the Champions League. Barca are in it. So if De Jong does leave, you've got teams like PSG that are interested. Man City may be interested. So Ten Hag is going to have a really good personal relationship with Frenkie de Jong to persuade him to go to Man United right now. It's a sad state of affairs, but that's the reality. Man United aren't the big draw that they should be, because they're out of the Champions League and they're in a bit of turmoil. I think Declan Rice is slightly different in the sense that although West Ham are going to want a big fee for him if they sell him, he's earning about £60,000 a week at West Ham, which is mega money for me and you. But in the real world of football, when he joins up with England, he's probably one of the lowest paid players there, and that matters to players. He's had the best season of his career this year, and he's earning maybe a quarter of what he could earn somewhere else. And I think that is what ultimately happens in football, that players want to be paid what they think they're worth. So United have got a chance there, because they look at Chelsea. Chelsea are in turmoil with the ownership. They might not be a rival this year. Man City have said that they're not interested in Rice. You never know with City. They might come back and go for him. Liverpool aren't interested. Tottenham and Arsenal, it's not an appealing move for him because of West Ham. So United might have a free run to Declan Rice. It's whether they're prepared to pay the fee that West Ham want. But they are going to have to sign players of that ilk, because if they just sign mid-ranking players like Fred and Matic, they're not going to go anywhere. So they have to make that breakthrough. And I think United are keen to make a couple of big signings.
That is the problem, isn't it? The price tag, because Declan Rice is definitely a player that Manchester United fans would love to have at the club. I'm sure the Manchester United board, Ten Hag, would be interested in Declan Rice. He's a top player that has done it in the Premier League as well over the last couple of seasons. The only problem is his price tag with all the positions that Manchester United need to fill. I mean, David Moyes talking about 150 million is just absolutely ridiculous. But of course, it'd be up to Manchester United to see what the fee would be for him. And talking about fees and how many players we need to bring in, what do you think? What kind of budget do you think Manchester United could be working with this summer? I mean, they're not in the Champions League, so they've not got the money coming from there, but they massively need to invest in this squad. And the names we've been linked to seem to be quite expensive. So, do you think that? I mean, how much money do you reckon that will spend this summer?
They usually work to budget between 50 and 75 million, in terms of net. And then if they can sell players to bring players in, that can go back into the pot. So they may end up spending maybe £100 million this summer, in terms of money they generated and money they bring in. But the problem is, there's 5 players that are leaving for nothing. So Pogba, Lingard, Mata and Cavani are free agents. They're gone. Matic wants to go. I don't think they'll get a fee for Matic, even though he's got a year on his contract. So that's 5 players at a door straight away you have to replace. Then who's left that you can actually raise a lot of money for? I mean, let's be honest. They've had the worst season in the Premier League history for United. So there's not a lot of players there that you could raise money for. Marcus Rashford, maybe. You could probably get 50 million for Marcus Rashford right now. Where would he go? Real Madrid missing out on Mbappe means that PSG don't need to replace Mbappe. So you do wonder whether people like Rashford could be sold for the money they could bring in. Personally, I would let Rashford go. I think some fans would agree, other fans wouldn't agree, given they'd want to see him given a chance to rediscover his form again. But I think Rashford is a player that you could sell for a fee. I don't think you can sell Ronaldo for a fee because he's on too much wages. Bruno Fernandes just signed a new contract. So United are limited in terms of the money they can raise by selling players. Maybe Dean Henderson, but maybe 25, 30 million for a keeper. So they're not going to bring a lot of money in. So they might have to look at selling someone like Rashford to give Ten Hag the chance to get 60 million for Rashford maybe and spend that on 2 players. So ultimately, I think they'll spend about £100 million net, which isn't a lot, but United have signed a guy that is meant to be a great coach. So his job will be to get more at the players that he's got, maybe make them a better team by doing that. So he might not need a lot of money to spend, but obviously he needs to make some reinforcements.
He definitely needs to make some, I think a lot of, it's one of them where Rome isn't built in a day. You can't do it all in one summer, and they're not going to be able to go out and just chuck 500 million at it this summer. But I definitely think it's going to be a couple transfer windows for him to get the players in, because like you said, we're not going to get many fees for players going out the door. So it's going to be hard for him, but hopefully he can coach the players to anything's got to be better than this season, hasn't it, when it comes to the players?
I think what United's problem has been over the years, it's not like they haven't spent money. They have spent money. They've spent, I think only City has spent more in the last 10 years on players. It's just United have wasted it. They've wasted it on players that they've paid too much for. So last year, for instance, they spent over 70 million on Jadon Sancho, and there's no market for him. Nobody else wanted him. So they could have maybe got him for £20 million less. Liverpool has spent £40 million on Canate, a defender that could be there for 10 years. United spent it on Varane, who, let's be honest, has had better days, and they've not invested that money well. And they don't spend the money wisely, so they've wasted money. So if United spend that same amount of money again, but are more strategic and smarter, then great. I can't think of many players over the last 5-6 years who've come to United and become better players. There really hasn't been any. Even Bruno Fernandes came and did really well, but he tailed off a bit. So that for me is the biggest indictment, that Liverpool will sign Andy Robertson from Hull for £7 million and then turn him into the world's best left back. They signed Wijnaldum from Newcastle for nothing, relegated Newcastle and made him into one of the biggest players at the team. So United don't seem to do that. They don't seem to be smart and intelligent in the market. They just throw money at things. They've got to stop doing that and be more strategic and be smarter and get the players that will become good players, players that can do it now. And they've just lost the way in that respect.
Well, for example, Wan-Bissaka was one of them players that we brought in. We expected him to evolve and improve, and again, a player that has been rumoured to be up for sale by Ten Hag. He's not sure he wants him. That could be a player that we get a fee for, and we have to reinvest in the right back area because there is only Dalot. Do you think that is something that could happen this summer?
Yeah, I think Wan-Bissaka will go if they can find somebody to buy him. I think he may end up back at Crystal Palace, but they spent £50 million on Wan-Bissaka, and they'd be looking to get half that because he's just not good enough. But at the time, United were telling us that we've got this great scouting system. We had 804 right backs in our database, and he's the top. Well, I'd hate to see some of the players that they didn't get, because if he's one of the best out of 804, Man City signed João Cancelo that summer, and I don't think he was on United's list. Now, Wan-Bissaka, he played for Crystal Palace, a team that defends a lot, a team that doesn't need to attack and use the flanks as United do. He just totally ill-equipped to Man United at the outset. Again, a bad scouting decision. So, yes, they can try and sell him, but then Dalot isn't good enough either. So that's another player that they need to kind of look at and think, do we keep him as a second choice right back, or do we try and get some money for him? They've just got bad issues all over the pitch. Luke Shaw, Alex Telles, are they good enough? Not really, but are you going to get any money for them? Not really. So you're stuck with players that you can't sell but aren't good enough, and that is the problem that they've got. That's why it's important that Ten Hag can coach them to become better players. But a lot of them now have been there for so long, the mid-20s, late 20s, they're too old to be coaching to become better players.
Well, this is a problem, isn't it? We're talking about 70 to 100 million net spend here, but then we're looking all over the pitch, and you've got, I agree, both fullbacks need improvement, centre midfield need improvement, striker apparently we're looking at coming in. it's a hard task. It's a really hard task.
Well, this is it. I mean, you could even make a case for the goalkeeper as well, because I know David De Gea divides opinion, but for me, he's a keeper that is out of date. He's not like an Alisson or an Edison that comes off his line and makes it easy for his defenders. I think with David De Gea, because he defends in his 6-yard box, he makes the defenders drop deeper, so they invite more pressure on the defenders, and they're struggling. So there's every area of the pitch. But yeah, I mean, a centre forward is a massive thing because Cavani's gone, Ronaldo is 37, Mason Greenwood, nobody knows, nobody can say. Unlikely to be back, but we don't know that. Anthony Martial has been there before, but he's never really scored enough goals. So they obviously need a centre forward, but they're the ones that cost the most money because they're the guys that make the difference. So they're not going to get Harry Kane. They're not going to spend 100 million plus on Harry Kane because he's in the Champions League with Tottenham. So why would he go to Man United? Robert Lewandowski, keen to leave Bayern Munich, but wants to go to Barcelona, Champions League. Darwin Núñez, yeah, maybe second, third tier. Is he good enough? If we're talking about Portugal again, is he really good enough for Man United in the Premier League? We don't know. So there's question marks over every player they'll sign because they're not in a position of strength. They're having to take gambles. And again, that is a concern. Tammy Abraham at Roma, again, is he good enough for Man United? But that is the market they're looking at because they can't offer Champions League football or even potentially winning the Premier League football. So it's a tough sell.
It's quite a bleak market out there for Manchester United, to be honest with you, because like we were talking about, we need the top end players, but we're not going to be able to attract them without the Champions League football. So it's going to be hard. Richarlison was a player that we were linked to around when Everton was going down. Apparently he was on the board's list. Do you think now Everton has stayed up, that's a player that United will stay clear of?
He's a good player, Richarlison. He's a player that's kind of underestimated by a lot of people. He really has got a bit of something about him, but I think Everton paid 40-50 million for Richarlison, so they'll want a lot of that back. And I think United will have to pay over the odds for Richarlison when they can probably get a younger player, maybe a better player for less if they shop abroad. So I'm not sure he's the answer, but he'd be better than what they've got. But do United need to go a step higher than Richarlison? I think they probably do. But again, it's finding the right player that fits the profile that can stick around. I think they missed a massive trip by not going for Dusan Vlahovic in January when he went to Juventus from Fiorentina. He was available for around £50 million, and they could have really taken a chance. I think he could be another Ruud van Nistelrooy the way he plays. He's got a real kind of physical presence, scores a lot of goals, but missed out on him, let him at Juventus. And if he does well at Juventus, then in 18 months' time they want £100 million for him. So again, that was a bad decision.
Yeah, it's a lot of bad decisions adding up, and it's going to hurt United. And hopefully, this is the time that they make a change, and it changes, because that's what's going to need to happen if Ten Hag's going to have the tools to get back to the top. I mean, when I was reading your article yesterday, very hard hitting for a lot of fans about the dressing room dismay over the course of this season. We've heard constant things come out of the dressing room all season, leaks. Paul Scholes let it slip about Jesse Lingard saying that the dressing room was a disgrace. Do you think that there is a way back for these players under Ten Hag? Because he did keep mentioning in his press conference, these set of players did get second last year, and I've got to be able to work with my set of players. That to me seems like he's obviously, he knows that he's got to work with a lot of these players next season. He's got to try and get the best out of them. Do you think that Ten Hag's going to be looking to change the dressing room, the attitude of a lot of these players straight away? Because some of the stuff in that article were just crazy to even think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. I think 3 or 4 players, the right players, can make a massive difference. And I think let's kind of have a cheering out on this. That I think if you sign the right players, it'll lift the mood of the dressing room and lift the charisma, and the belief will come back again. And a lot of these players are good players. They've been let down over the last year, 18 months by a lack of coaching. I don't think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was good enough. I think a lot of the players were frustrated by him, and it was the same with Rangnick. But I know right now a lot of the fans have really got it in for the players. I think rightly so in some respects, but equally, I think let's just turn it around a little bit. If you're at school and you've got a teacher who's absolutely hopeless, and it leads to an unruly class, and the bad kids start messing about, and the good kids can't get anything done because nobody's taking any notice. I think that's the situation United have had with Solskjaer and with Rangnick. I think some of the players, some of the top-end players, they want to be coached by top-end coaches. They go away to the national teams and they hear about what Guardiola's like, what Klopp's like, what Tuchel's like, and they get frustrated by the fact that their international teammates are being coached by elite coaches, top coaches who make them better, who have just such charisma and belief. And they're looking around thinking, we're Man United. We're not being coached or led by the top people. So I think there's a frustration there. I think some of the stuff that's come out from the players and the players' camps has been because they actually care, not because they don't care, because they're sick of being beaten by Liverpool and Man City. They're sick of winning nothing. They come to Man United to win things. They don't come to Man United to pick up wages. I think it's unfair to suggest that they only come for that, because they can get that anywhere. They come to Man United because they want to be with one of the biggest clubs in the world winning things. So I think their frustrations have come out this season because what they've seen from the people who are leading them hasn't been good enough. So in some respects, fair play for the players to register their complaints about that, because you want a boss you can play for. You want a boss that you've got a kind of faith in, and they haven't had that for too long. So, but now they have. Ten Hag's coming with a big reputation. He's saying the right things, so they have to get behind him. They can't constantly blame the lack of coaching, the lack of expertise. We don't know if Ten Hag's good enough. We don't, but they have to give him a chance, and I think they will do. I think we got to the point now where the players just need to back somebody and think, this guy's for real. But it won't take them long to find out. If he's not up to it, we'll probably know by August or September, because dressing rooms, when they're not happy, tell people.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Like, player power, I think, in Manchester United has been running rife for quite a long time. It's all well and good saying that they didn't think Rangnick was a good enough coach, but the same thing came out about Mourinho, the same thing came out about Van Gaal, the same thing came out about Moyes. The players throwing every manager under the bus, and if they throw in again another manager under the bus quite early on in his career, it's going to be very telling of the attitudes that we've got in this dressing room. Of course, you want the top coaches, absolutely, but I do think Ten Hag coming in, he is a tracksuit manager, as he's been described as a tracksuit manager. He's going to lead the coaching sessions. I think these players definitely need to give him a chance, and obviously some of the players that have the bad attitude, you're not going to be able to sell them. Do you think that there is going to be a fresh attitude in this changing room, and the players will change for Ten Hag, and it'll start off as a fresh, new, completely different project?
It all depends on if he can win them over on the training pitch. I think that is what it boils down to. Let's be honest, players don't throw good coaches under a bus. They don't. I mean, all the managers that you mentioned there, David Moyes wasn't up to it, never was. Louis van Gaal drove them mad because he was just so determined to control everything, to the point where, if you're 6 inches out of place on the training pitch, you move it. He was far too overbearing. Mourinho just left the place. He fell out with everybody, and Solskjaer wasn't up to it. So we're not talking about coaches that have delivered big things. That all coaches that weren't up to it. So that is why players throw coaches under the bus, because they're not good enough. Let's be honest, that's what it is. So with Ten Hag, we don't know what he's like. He's got a reputation of being a coach, as being a guy that the players at Ajax liked him. That's a good thing. But I mean, I've been told over the years by different players at different clubs that a dressing room can tell whether a manager's for real or not within 5 minutes. What he says, how he says it, if he takes responsibility himself, if he puts in good sessions, if he talks like he believes in himself. So that's down to him. But the players have got to give him time to get his methods across. But like I say, with David Moyes, it was fairly obvious by the end of August, September, that the players weren't having him. And if that's the case with Ten Hag, there'll be a reason for it. It won't all be on the players all the time. But, let's hope it doesn't go that way. Let's hope this guy is the guy that can, energize the dressing room and transform the players that haven't been playing well, because they're all desperate for a coach to come in and make them better. They just want to be better. The players want to be better, and they want to win things. That is ultimately what it's all about. It's not about being miserable and moaning. It's because they want to win things.
Well, I mean, some great insight there. Thank you so much for coming on the channel. I'm sure everyone will appreciate you giving up your time to come on and speak to us. Everyone in the chat, thank you for listening to Mark Ogden. Make sure you check out his work at ESPN. And thank you so much, Matt, for coming on. We've really enjoyed having you on here.
No props. Hope it's more cheerful next time.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be in a better position.
Cheers.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, guys, that was Mark Ogden for ESPN. Obviously, I was looking at the chat as I was doing that interview, and got to be respectful to the guest. He's come on to voice his opinion, give his opinion about Manchester United, and he has got inside sources at the club. He works for ESPN, which is a good outlet. We had Rob Dawson on the other week, who works for the same outlet. These guys have insight at the club. Potentially, is it coming from people close to Manchester United that want to make Manchester United look good? Of course it can be. Every source is going to be tinted, but he came on, give his opinions on what's happening, and that's all you can ask for. You've got to look at both sides of the coin and look at what different people are saying. But did I agree with everything he said? Of course I didn't. No one is ever going to agree with everyone, but let's get down and discuss it right now, because I mean, a lot of interesting things said that, I mean, I was very, very shocked about a few things that was said there, to be honest with you. The Timber thing, let's just start off with the Timber thing, because that was one for me that I was really shocked at, because we've heard different sources coming out and saying that Timber is almost done. Timber's on the top of Ten Hag's list. Timber might be on his way to Manchester United very soon, might be Manchester United's first signing. Yet, obviously, Mark Ogden comes on the show and he has got sources at Manchester United, and he says that Pau Torres is more of the target for Manchester United. He doesn't know if Timber could fit in the Premier League. He thinks that Manchester United need to not shop in the Dutch league because it might throw a spanner in the works straight away. I mean, personally, for me, if I'm looking at both, and a lot of you guys who are members here have watched the members video comparing Timber to Torres, comparing Timber to Varane, comparing Timber to Maguire, you would, my personal opinion, and I know a lot of you guys in the chats are, is that I definitely think Timber would be the better option. Young, fresh, quick, pacey, worked with Ten Hag before, isn't going to come in and sit on the bench, I don't think. I think he's got the ability to come into the Premier League. Yeah, we've got someone close to the club saying that potentially it could be Pau Torres, and potentially that Ten Hag actually might not have full control over transfers. And to me, when you look at that, you think, if Mark Ogden is right and it does end up leaning towards Pau Torres and not Timber, I think it is John Murtough and the board that are ruling transfers. I honestly really do. It's no coincidence that we've been looking at Pau Torres for a couple of years now. He was a big rumour last summer. Every time we've had different journalists on the show, Pau Torres has popped up as our option at centre-back. And that, I don't think Ten Hag's come in and said, I want Pau Torres, let's put it that way. The Timber links have come through Ten Hag coming in. He's worked with Timber at Ajax. He's got a very good relationship with Ajax. He obviously feels that he can be part of his project. He knows the way that Timber plays. Timber knows the way that Ten Hag wants to play. He knows his training. So Ten Hag has come in and probably, this is only my opinion, and said, this is the player I want. The board, like Mark did say, is probably gone, I'm not sure about that, because they've not completely read up on him and not completely in the know about him. So you are going to get discussions between the board and Ten Hag have been had. And what I'm hoping happens is that the board do decide to back Ten Hag and go with his decision. Because like he said, it is not going to be good if the first signing that Ten Hag wants is declined by the board and they go and get someone else. This has happened time and time again at Manchester United. We've had it under Mourinho, saying he was crying out for a centre-back. We've had it where we wanted Van Dijk. He even wanted Maguire at the time, we didn't get him, but we went for Lindelof instead because the board thought he was the better signing. It's happened quite a lot of times in Manchester United, and I just hope that they've learned from this decision. And he's right, the players that we've brought in hasn't been good enough, and that's why the scouts have been sacked. Emily Derry saying, I think Timber would complement Varane better. He's quicker and good on the ball and positionally good. Emily, I completely agree with you. I mean, before I came on the show today and before we had that insight from Mark, I wrote a few things down that I thought about Timber, and I tweeted the other day actually that I'm actually 95% sure, I mean, we have these percentages on the show, that Timber is going to get done. And the reason from my perspective that I think it will get done is because it's a player that Ten Hag definitely wants. Ten Hag has already developed him. The stats shown on the members video, and members, I'm sure you'll have watched it. Non-members, if you want to join and watch that video, it's really interesting. I've seen it myself, and the stats very promising from a young centre-back. And yes, you can say that Varane and Maguire haven't had good seasons at Manchester United. And yes, you can say that Timber is in the Dutch league, but this guy is also in the Champions League, performing well every week. He also has won the Dutch league, which, yes, it's not a strong enough league, but he's still good that he's playing at the heart of United's defence in the Dutch league and the Champions League. And he's also his stats compared to Torres as well, who's playing in La Liga. They've not qualified for Champions League football. I mean, Mark said he's an established centre-back that can come in and be one of the best centre-backs in the league straight away. Personally, I don't agree. I don't agree with that. I think he reminds me of Lindelof Mark too. He reminds me of a player that hasn't necessarily got all the attributes to succeed in the Ten Hag system and succeed as a Premier League player. I think in La Liga, some of his attributes aren't as challenged. And if he got to the Premier League, it wouldn't be as good as a signing as what Mark was making out. But this is where there's different opinions that people come in, and different opinions what people have. I've watched Timber, I've watched Pau Torres, and I do think Timber, like all of you, would be a better fit, but there'll be some things in the chat that you'll think is a better fit and I won't. It's just difference of opinion, guys. And I've said before that I think Richarlison wouldn't be a bad purchase, and I know everyone in the chat thinks it would be. So there is difference of opinions, but with Timber, he's not going to be over 40 million, so it's definitely a deal that Manchester United can do if they want to put the money there. He's going to want to come to Manchester United because it is a step up in his career. He's worked with Ten Hag before. He knows what it's about, and he's excellent on the ball, brilliant at playing the high line. And I think, like Ten Hag said, he doesn't want to bring in players that are going to sit on the bench. He stated himself that he doesn't understand what happened with Donny van de Beek, and that he's not going to bring in a player that's not going to work in his system. I think in this transfer window, it's so necessary for Ten Hag to bring in players that are going to start in the first 11, because he can't afford to be waiting around, waiting for players to be good enough to play in this first team. We know that this first starting 11 is not good enough. It's not been good enough all season. So is Ten Hag going to wait around, waste money and waste signings on players that are going to be developing and going to take a while to get into the first team? I don't think so. I think he's going to bring in players that immediately are going to come into the first 11 and immediately going to improve the team. And by the sounds of it, it doesn't sound like he's going to get a lot of money to do that. I mean, net spend 70 to 100 mil. Or was it, did he say 50 to 70? I think it was 70 to 100. It surely had to be. That I'm thinking he is right in the fact that we're not going to be able to make much sales from the players that we've got because of the poor season that they've had and because of the wages that they're on. It's just, we're not going to be able to generate that much money. So say if you get, and that's at a push, 20 million for Wan-Bissaka, Bailly, Jones, Piera, we're saying 40 million for that. You've got 60 million added on to the transfer fee, and that's just me thinking off the top of my head at a push. So you've then got, say if you put it at 100 million, I think United are going to get about 140 million to spend this summer if we sell the right players. 140 million, and we're talking about Declan Rice being a target. He's going to cost at least 100 mil. And then you also talk De Jong being a big target. Bayern are saying at the moment 80 million euros, which works out about 65 million pounds. There's players that we're looking at that aren't going, that we're not going to be able to get all of these players. So at the moment, it is a little bit worrying to me that we've got someone there like Rangnick who does know about young players and does know about bringing players in for cheap. For example, he's recommended Nkunku that can develop and can be part of this team. Yes, Nkunku isn't cheap, but I'm sure he's got a lot of other options over different leagues that he's been looking at and have been scouting. So it's a bit worrying to me right now that the options that we have, they're quite expensive for the money that we've got. And it's like, are we going to get the positions that we need? I'm not sure that we're going to. I'm really not sure that we're going to with the money that as said has been given, and Mark as well saying that he doesn't think Rangnick's going to be involved at all in transfer business. I mean, that to me is a little bit worrying because he was brought in for that exact reason. He's obviously not a coach. He's brought in to help it develop and help us bring in better players and change our scouting network and change our transfer structure. And he seemed really confident speaking about that type of stuff. So, I mean, I'm to be honest, this interview has made me a little bit worried for the summer and kind of put a few doubts in my mind. But hopefully we can get some business done before, like you said, the 27th of June, where Ten Hag takes over, and Ten Hag is going to be making decisions based on the squad. We've heard it time and time again that Ten Hag wants his players in before pre-season. So June's going to be a really important month to see how many players we're going to get through the door, who Manchester United are targeting, and what positions we're looking at, because Mark said it on the morning show, we're going to get linked to a lot of players this summer, so it's hard to differentiate which players Manchester United are actually going to be serious about. But it's going to be a really important and really busy month especially with all the different information that are coming out of different sources that have got good sources at the club, because there's a lot of different information coming out which is interesting to us fans, but also the fans are still up in the air at the moment about what's going to happen. Lastly, before we finish the show and finish the interview, I just wanted to have a little say with you guys about Ten Hag coming in yesterday and making his presence known in the press conference. Obviously, we spoke about that with Mark Ogden, and we both agreed that he didn't seem too keen on speaking to Rangnick. Obviously, he's going to speak to him, but he's up for making his own decisions. And I think it was really interesting to see the way Ten Hag went about his press conference and went about meeting all of the staff yesterday and putting, I thought he instantly made his mark, if I'm being honest. When I was looking at the press conference and listening to his answers, yes, he was direct and blunt in his presser, but he got his points across. He didn't give too much away. He didn't give too much for journalists and fans to completely go directly into. He wants to keep his cards close to his chest right now, which I see as a good thing, because he wants the players to go away and think about themselves, and he can deliver the plan himself to his players without it coming through the grapevine. So I thought that was a good way to approach it. He still kept the players on side, as he said. I don't agree with this point that the players that are in the club now came second last year, and then this year, obviously, we've had a massive dip in form, but these same set of players got second. I don't agree with that point, and I feel like deep down, maybe Erik ten Hag doesn't also, but it's a good way to keep the players inside and give them confidence, because despite whether Ten Hag wants to work with everybody this year, he's going to have to get results. He's not going to be able to get rid of everyone. He's not going to be able to get everyone in who he wants to get in. So he's got to keep the players on side. The last thing he wants is the players going against him straight away, because it, one, makes his results go worse. It makes the dressing room crumble straight away. So I think it was a good decision to try and get some of the players on side that have had this terrible attitude all season. We've got a super chat here from Mashimo. Great job, Beth. Thank you very much. Imagine the riots if we sell no one because they're overpaid and overage and the board only put 50 million in after that season. I mean, if that happened, you'd see absolute uproar from the fans. The fans are at their limit now. They are at their limit. They did the right thing in bringing Ten Hag into the club instead of Pochettino. It was the right decision to be made. But only sending 50 million and then not selling anyone, I think you'd see quite a few Glazers out protests on the back of that. So I don't think that'll happen, because I think they'd have to be severely stupid for that to happen, because the fans just aren't going to put up with it. It's the start of a new project, and we need to be investing money into it and giving the manager exactly what he wants. And Ten Hag's really encouraging. The openness of him in his first day, the way that he's gone and met all the staff. I saw something in the MEM by Tyrone Mitchell that he made a point of introducing himself to every staff member he met while walking the corridors of Old Trafford. He spent 20 minutes in the staff canteen, chatting to employees, posing for pictures. He's impressed and met all of the staff and wants to keep bringing the atmosphere and culture. He seems like he's gone in there with a purpose straight away to bring his own stamp, bring his own atmosphere. And I also think it makes the players aware yesterday that he's here now, he's the boss, he's gone and met all the staff, he's going to be speaking to Rangnick, whether he takes all of his contributions on board or not. I think he'll definitely be listening to him. And his demeanour in the press conference, which I can imagine the players have watched, because that's exactly what I'd be doing, seemed quite blunt, seemed like he was the boss. But he also seemed like he had confidence in himself, and he knew the plan that he was going to do, and he's here to do a job. I really do think he used confidence, and I think it was a really good way for him to make his stamp into the club. The players reflect and think about that now, and they come back on the 27th of June, and Ten Hag delivers the plan to them, which hopefully we'll have a couple more additions there anyway. And on my last point, on bringing players from Ajax across, Mark's point about he doesn't think that'd be a good idea, I think it would be, because immediately you've got people that know Ten Hag and know the way he trains, and he saves him a little bit of trouble in pre-season. It gives the players an example of what to adapt to, and I think it really, as well, disrupts dressing room cliques that we've talked about a lot on the show. But the beauty of football and the beauty of having different people on each interview is seeing different opinions. And I do think that Mark definitely gave us some good insight from a different side of the club, and it's really great to have different people on and get different opinions on here. But thank you so much, everybody, for watching today, watching the interview. I love seeing different opinions, and I really like doing these interviews and like sharing all the information with you guys as well. And make sure you do check out his work at ESPN, and make sure you tune into the next interview, because we'll have a lot of these coming over the summer. We'll have a lot of transfer videos. We've got an 8 p.m. show tonight that there'll probably be more news breaking. We're in transfer season. It's going to be a great window, and hopefully, like we just discussed then, we're going to end up having a great season next season, and the board provide Ten Hag with the tools to do that in the summer. But thank you for watching, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.